Hello.
My name's Emma, I'm 25 years old, and I just wrapped up college with 2 degrees under my belt, one in IT and the other in management. I was the first person in my entire family to even attend university, let alone graduate at the top of my class. For most families, that kind of thing would be a huge deal, something worth throwing a party over. For me, though, it barely caused a ripple unless you count the buzz over my cousin Lily launching her online store, or my brother Carter tearing it up in his new basketball league. Suddenly, everyone seemed to have endless time, energy, and money, just not for me. Meanwhile, I'd clawed my way through 4 brutal years on scholarships, juggling late-night internships and side gigs, and that barely earned a passing grunt. Still, I kept trying. I always had. Growing up in a family where attention was like a currency you had to hustle for, I got real good at overcompensating. I was the one mowing the lawn when Dad's back went out, the one hauling grocery bags when Carter forgot, again, even the one who picked up the heating bill last winter after Lily overdrafted her account and couldn't cover her share of the rent. I played my part, the good son, the reliable cousin, the quiet one who always stepped up. But when graduation day came and went without a single family member in the stands, no text, no call, not even a late night, congrats, I realized I had one last shot at pretending I mattered. I decided to spend what little I had saved booking a rooftop spot downtown. It wasn't anything fancy, but it had a killer view of the skyline and a built-in sound system. I even went out of my way to order everybody's favorite foods, Carter's go-to spicy burger, Lily's beloved cream of spinach soup, and my grandma's weird but favorite pizza with pineapple and capers. I didn't care about presents or speeches. I didn't want a big production. I just wanted one simple night, one moment where, for once, I wasn't invisible. 5 days before the party, I sent out reminders to everyone, double-checked everything with them, and then did it all over again the day before, just to be sure. Every time I reached out, I made sure to say stuff like, "I can't wait," and "You really deserve this." Those messages gave me a tiny spark of hope, one I wish I'd stomped out before it ever had the chance to catch fire. The night of the party, I showed up an hour early. I wanted everything perfect, the food laid out, the drinks nice and cold, and the playlist I'd obsessed over for weeks running without a hitch. I squeezed myself into the last good suit I owned, the same one I wore to graduation. It barely fit anymore, hanging a little loose around my shoulders after months of stress had worn me down. I stood by the entrance, plastering on a hopeful smile every time I heard the elevator ding, like some loyal dog perking up at the sound of a car pulling in the driveway. But no one came. 5 minutes dragged into 30. 30 stretched into an hour. The staff gave me polite, almost pitying nods, hovering nearby like they weren't sure if they should start packing things up or keep waiting. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the messages, pulling up traffic apps, even feeding myself the ridiculous hope that maybe, just maybe they were planning some huge surprise and all of this was part of it. Then right at 8:24 p.m., 2 beers in and debating if I should just call it a night, my phone buzzed. It was a photo. Lily had posted it and tagged everyone, Carter, Mom, Dad, Uncle Mike, even Grandma. There they were, all of them, dressed in matching pajamas, sprawled across my parents' living room couch with pizza boxes piled up and blankets tossed around like a fort. The caption under the photo read, "Family movie night." We needed this. My fingers froze against the screen. I tapped on the photo, zooming in. There, shoved under a couple of greasy pizza boxes, was my graduation photo, the same one I'd proudly sent out to all of them just a few weeks earlier. My mouth went dry. There was no mistaking it. They weren't running late. They weren't caught in traffic. They were never planning to come at all. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sank down into one of the rented folding chairs, letting the distant hum of the city fill up the hollow ache spreading through my chest. I scrolled back through every message I had sent. Every empty promise. Every half-hearted, "We're so proud of you," that had built up to this exact moment. The food sat untouched and went cold. The venue manager came over, gave me this sympathetic little nod, and said he wouldn't charge me for the extra time. I just nodded back, didn't trust myself to say anything. When I finally made it home, my own tiny apartment, paid for by the freelance jobs I juggled while somehow keeping a perfect GPA, I dropped onto the edge of my bed and stared up at the ceiling. The same ceiling I used to look up at, dreaming about all the big things ahead, promotions, vacations, celebrations where, for once, someone would remember my name halfway through the toast. And then it hit me. All at once. Like someone flipped on a light switch in a room I didn't even realize had gone pitch black. Turns out they needed me a whole lot more than I ever needed them. That realization hit me hard. And that's when I grabbed my laptop. I logged into every single shared account I was tied to: electricity, internet, even that cheap little streaming bundle I had added Lily onto last year. Every single bill, every convenience, all of it was set up under my name. All because deep down it made me feel like I belonged somewhere. Like I mattered. I sat there for a second just staring at the screen. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about seeing things for what they were. About understanding that no matter how many pizza nights I paid for or how many errands I ran, I'd always just be some extra in a movie they were starring in. So I typed out one group text. Short and sweet. Good luck covering next month's bills without me. Then I blocked them. Every single one. No exceptions. But that was just the beginning. Because 2 days later the silence finally broke. And when it did, it was loud. It kicked off with a Facebook post from my mom. One of those overly dramatic, passive-aggressive rants she's famous for. The kind where she tries to paint herself as this long-suffering saint, but really just ends up sounding desperate and guilty. Some people forget who was there for them when they had nothing. Just remember, karma's real. No names. No direct call-outs. But the comments section exploded within minutes. Naturally, Lily jumped into the comments because of course she did, dropping some gem like, "Hope they realize family isn't optional. We're all we have." I watched it all unfold the way you'd flip through some trashy magazine at the checkout line. Mildly curious, but already knowing you're not buying it. A small part of me, the part that hadn't quite died yet, half expected anyone to reach out directly. Maybe Carter shooting a lazy "Hey, everything cool?" text. Maybe Dad calling, pretending he had no clue what was going on. But nope. Nothing. Total silence. Until day 5. That morning my phone lit up with a call from a number I hadn't seen pop up in months. My dad's work phone. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Then Mom's number flashed across the screen. Then Lily's. Even Carter's girlfriend shot me a random text. "Hey, I think there's some confusion. Did something happen?" I ignored every single one. But the one that actually made me laugh. A dry, bitter laugh I barely recognized. Hit at exactly 3:39 p.m. It was a text from Dad. Back on his regular number now. "Why is the internet shut off? I'm trying to log into work." No hello. No "Hey Emma." No "Sorry we missed your graduation party." No acknowledgement at all of what they'd done. Just a complaint. Just a demand. Just a reminder that, to them, I wasn't a son or a brother. I was tech support. I didn't answer. Oh, believe me, I wanted to. I even drafted a few responses, one angry, one dripping in sarcasm, and one that was just a link to a therapist directory. In the end, though, I just powered off my phone and headed to the gym. Later that night, when I got home, I found 2 voicemails waiting for me. Both frantic. Both from Mom, her voice tight, high-pitched and shaking. The first voicemail was Mom, her voice wobbling. "We don't understand what's happening. Your father can't log into his payroll account, the smart TV isn't working, and Lily says she can't even access the group plan anymore. Did something happen? Can we please talk? Still no, sorry we missed your party. Still no, we should have been there." Just a laundry list of little inconveniences that all of a sudden made me important enough to chase down. By the end of the week, when texts and calls kept hitting dead ends, they started sending mail. Actual physical letters, because I had blocked every digital way they could reach me. The first envelope came from Grandma. Inside was a shaky, handwritten note in her neat, flowery cursive. "Emma, I don't know what's happening, but everyone's upset. Please call your mother. She's been crying for days." Crying. Now she was crying. Where were the tears when I sat alone on that rooftop, picking at cold shrimp and staring at an untouched cake? Where was all that heartbreak when I sent my graduation photos into the family group chat and got a whopping 3 likes and 0 comments? Where was it when I begged just once for a single night where I could feel like I mattered? Grandma had always been different. She was the only one who didn't actively hurt me, the only one who hadn't used me like a utility. So I called her. She picked up on the very first ring. Her relief pouring out fast, like steam hissing from a kettle. "Oh, thank heavens, Emma. You had me worried sick." "I'm fine, Grandma," I said. "I know, honey. But your mother," she said, her voice dropping low, "she's a mess." "Is that right?" I said, my voice tight. "She says you've been acting cold," Grandma went on. "That you lashed out and shut everything down without warning. I gripped the phone a little tighter. Did she happen to mention my graduation party? I asked. There was a pause, a long one. No, Grandma said slowly. She mentioned something about a scheduling mix-up. Said you threw something together last minute and didn't really confirm with anyone. I could feel the heat rising in my face, part anger, part disbelief. A mix-up? Really? I had receipts, calendar invites, text messages confirming the date. I even had a voice memo from Lily herself chirping we're all set for Saturday. Can't wait. And now they were feeding Grandma this story that I hadn't invited them properly? Grandma, I said, my voice shaking despite how hard I tried to keep it steady. I sent everything weeks ahead. I booked the venue, I ordered the food, I planned the whole thing around their schedules. They didn't forget, I said quietly. They just chose not to come. Silence filled the line again. Then finally Grandma spoke, her voice soft. I believe you. But then, almost like she couldn't help herself, she added. But your mother swears otherwise. Of course she does. Because if she ever admitted the truth, she'd have to face the fact that she only cares when there's something in it for her. That's when Grandma said something that stuck with me for days afterward. You've always been the one trying the hardest, Emma. Maybe it's time you let them do the trying for once. After that, I didn't say much. We said our goodbyes, and I promised I'd call her again soon. And I meant it. But I didn't unblock anybody. I didn't restart any payments. I didn't fold or second-guess myself. Instead, I started living like I was finally free. Because for the first time in a long, long while, I really was. Only thing is, freedom tends to rattle desperate people. And desperate people? They don't go down without kicking and screaming. Because just 1 week later, I came home to something that changed the whole game. It was a Tuesday morning. Sunny, peaceful, the kind of day that feels almost too quiet. I had just wrapped up a client meeting and was feeling lighter than I had in months. Lighter than a guy probably should after cutting off half his family. There was a new kind of silence in my apartment now, and it wasn't the heavy, lonely kind either. It was clean, peaceful. No buzzing phones. No surprise favors I didn't sign up for. Just me, the quiet, and the life I was finally starting to build on my own terms. No guilt-soaked favors disguised as love. Just me, the low hum of the fridge, and the kind of peace I hadn't realized I was starving for. At least that's how it was. Right up until I spotted the envelope taped to my door. At first glance, I figured it was just a missed delivery slip, or maybe some notice from the building management. But then I saw it, my name scrawled across the front in thick, slanted marker. No return address. No stamp. Just slapped there, messy and dramatic, like something a kid would do after being sent to their room. I peeled it off the door, opened it slowly, and pulled out a single sheet of plain printer paper. Typed. Double-spaced. Practically shaking with anger between the lines. It read, Emma, I don't know who you think you are, but this little tantrum has gone too far. We've bent over backwards for you your entire life, and one missed party does not justify this kind of disrespect. Your father can't do his work, Lily's lost access to her subscriptions, and your grandmother is sick with worry. You are punishing your whole family over an imagined slight. That's childish and cruel. I hope you're proud. Sign, Mom. No love, Mom. No sincerely. No sign of any actual remorse. Just a cold, corporate-style letter like I was some intern they were gearing up to fire. I almost laughed right there in the hallway. Almost laughed. Almost. But instead, the letter just sat there in my hand, heavy, like a slap that didn't sting right away. Just left this slow, crawling ache that wrapped itself up my arm and squeezed around my throat. Because that was the moment it really hit me. There wasn't going to be an apology. No quiet moment of realization. No heart-to-heart phone call. No teary-eyed visit to my doorstep. That's not who my mother was. She wasn't the type to admit she had treated her own kid like an afterthought for years. She was the type who would rewrite the story, pass it around like gospel, and expect everyone else to sing along without questioning a word of it. And maybe, just maybe, they would have. Maybe Grandma, Carter, and the rest would have swallowed it down, just like they had with every other half-truth she ever fed them. But not this time. This time, I wasn't going to stay silent. That night, I dug out the old graduation slideshow I had put together for the party nobody bothered to show up for. I pulled up a free website builder, dropped in every photo, the venue, the decorations, the untouched food, added screenshots of the text messages confirming the invites, copies of the receipts for the rooftop rental. Even the playlist I never got to press play on. Then right at the top, I wrote one simple caption. Here's the graduation party you all missed. Not because you forgot, but because I was never important enough for you to show up. I posted it across my social media. Locked the comments. No tagging. No shouting. Just a quiet, permanent record of what had really happened, of what celebrating alone had looked like. And then it blew up. Friends from college, people I hadn't talked to in months, started flooding my inbox with messages like, "This broke me and I can't believe they did that to you." Even acquaintances, folks I barely knew beyond a few classes, were sharing the post, calling it gut-wrenching and the most honest thing I've ever read. By the next morning, I had 3 missed calls from Lily, 2 from Dad, and a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was shaky this time, but still somehow not apologetic. "Emma, this is too far. You're humiliating us. Why are you doing this?" Why? Because for once in their lives, they were feeling exactly what I had grown up drowning in. Unseen. Unheard. Unimportant. That weekend, the fallout kicked into overdrive. Lily showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door like she was gonna break it down. I didn't let her in. She banged and shouted for a solid 5 minutes before yelling through the door. "You're not the only one who's been through stuff, you know. We all have issues." I stood there on the other side, arms crossed, silent. Are you seriously just gonna ghost us forever? Over a party? But it was never just about the party. It never had been. It was about every single time they made me feel like a burden, something they had to deal with, not someone they wanted around. It was about all the years I gave and gave and gave, and when I finally needed something in return, I was told I was being too sensitive. It was about shrinking myself down smaller and smaller so they could feel bigger, and now that I had finally reclaimed my voice, they were scrambling. Not because they missed me. Not because they cared. But because their comfort, their control, was slipping right through their fingers. A few days later, I found out they were trying to spin the story. Carter put up a post about how family is messy but worth fighting for, trying to sound noble. Lily chimed in the comments with, "People forget how much we did for him." I didn't respond. Not to Lily shouting. Not to Carter's social media cleanup attempts. Not to the slow trickle of guilt-drenched messages that started flooding in, every single one trying to rewrite the truth. "You're being unfair. You're overreacting. We're still family. This isn't how adults handle problems." The irony almost made me laugh. I had spent years, being the only adult in the room, cleaning up after their messes while they played emotional games and dodged responsibility like it was a sport. But going quiet wasn't enough anymore. Silence just gave them room to spin my absence into a tantrum, a phase, maybe even a betrayal. If I really wanted to move on, to heal, I had to do more than just defend myself with receipts. I had to take back the whole story. End it on my own terms. No loopholes. No open doors. So I started cutting cords they didn't even realize were still connected. First up, the finances. Turns out I had been quietly covering way more than just the utilities. A few years back, when I landed my first decent-paying internship, Mom asked if I could add the family's cell phones onto my plan, said it would save everyone money. At the time, I didn't think twice. Honestly, I felt proud. It felt like I was finally contributing in a way that mattered. That same year, Carter's old beater of a car died, and I co-signed for a newer one so he could get a delivery job. Dad swore up and down it was just until Carter built some credit. Spoiler, he never did. Lily, somewhere along the way, had also hit me up for a short-term loan to float her rent while she got her online store off the ground. I handed her $1,200 without blinking. She never mentioned it again. Like the money and the favor had just evaporated. They assumed I'd forgotten. Assumed I'd never call it in. They assumed wrong. I started by shutting down the family phone plan. No heads up. No gentle warning. No grace period. Just like that, gone. I called the phone provider, explained the situation, and by the end of the week, all 4 lines, mine, theirs, even Lily's, were terminated. I ported my own number over to a new carrier, tucked safely under a business plan they couldn't touch. Next up, the car. I called the dealership and revoked Carter's payment authorization. Since the car was still technically under my name, and he had been late more times than I could count, it wasn't exactly hard to make the case. Within 5 days, the car was flagged for repossession. And Lily? I didn't even have to lift a finger. I had kept the receipts, every single one. I just sent her a formal email, no anger, no theatrics, outlining the full debt. Attached every transaction. Let her know she had 30 days to set up a payment plan or the balance would be handed off to collections. No emotion. Just business. Just math. I braced myself for the blowback, figured there'd be yelling, accusations, drama. What I got instead was full-on panic. Carter called me from some random number. "Dude, what is this? They're trying to take my car." Mom left a voicemail, sobbing so hard her words slurred together. "Emma, this is too far. You're tearing the family apart." Lily didn't call, she emailed. Said she felt blindsided and betrayed. Said I was weaponizing money against people who loved me. Loved me? They didn't love me. They loved the money. The favors. The silence. Now that I was finally pulling everything back, they were left gasping for air, choking on the vacuum they had created for themselves. I kept quiet for another week. Then I sat down and drafted one last message. Not to them. To everyone else. I wrote a post. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just honest. I talked about what it was like growing up in a family where my job was to stay in the background, where my successes were brushed off, my milestones ignored, and my support treated like it was owed to them. I didn't name names. I didn't drag out the dirty laundry. I just told the truth. The story about the graduation party no one showed up for. The debts they pretended didn't exist. The utility bills I'd quietly covered for 3 straight years without so much as a thank you. I posted it on my personal blog, a place only a small circle of old friends even followed anymore. But within days it started getting shared. And then reshared. It didn't exactly go viral, but it definitely traveled, slipping into inboxes, popping up in old group chats. Suddenly I started hearing from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old teachers. Former classmates. Even neighbors who remembered me as the kid always bending over backwards for his family. Most of their messages said the same thing. I had no idea. You always seemed like the strong one. And that was the point. I had always seemed fine. Because that's how I'd been raised, conditioned to put everyone else's comfort ahead of my own, even if it meant starving for the tiniest scrap of validation. But not anymore. About a week after I posted my story, Grandma called. I picked up. At first, she didn't say much, just breathed quietly on the other end of the line. Then she said something that hit me like a punch to the gut. "They've started talking, Emma. Really talking. Not at me. Not about you. To each other." She told me Mom had finally been forced to reach out to her own siblings for help, people who had kept their distance for years, tired of the same old patterns. Carter had picked up extra shifts, working longer hours just to scrape by. Lily had started throwing flash sales on her online store, scrambling to cover her rent now that it wasn't being secretly subsidized. This wasn't revenge. This was a reckoning. I didn't feel satisfaction watching them struggle. But I also didn't feel any obligation to save them. For once I wasn't the janitor sweeping up after everyone else's messes. I wasn't the invisible safety net they didn't even realize they were standing on. I was free. And I didn't just sit around soaking in that freedom, I built on it. I used the emotional space I'd carved out to pour everything into my career. I went all in and started my own IT company. Built something from the ground up, with clients who respected deadlines, paid their invoices without games, and didn't treat me like some accessory to their success. Work took me places I used to only dream about, London, Paris. I even spent a few years living in Tokyo. And every time I stood on the roof of a high-rise or passed a family snapping graduation photos, I didn't feel hollow anymore. I felt whole. I still keep in touch with Grandma. She's the only one who never tried to twist my memories into something more convenient for everyone else. Every now and then, she gives me little updates, how Carter's finally starting to grow up a bit, how Mom's a lot quieter these days, how Lily's learning the hard way how to budget without a safety net. I don't ask for those updates. But I don't stop her either. I think Grandma knows I'm not sitting around, hoping for some big redemption arc. I'm not holding my breath for some grand apology. I'm just done. Maybe someday, years down the line, someone will reach out. Maybe there'll be an apology. Maybe they'll even mean it. But by the time that happens, I won't be standing around waiting. Because healing didn't come from hearing "I'm sorry." It came from realizing I never needed it to begin with.
Bye-bye.